Example 1, Bayes' theorem. Your company classifies customers in 3 categories: silver, gold, and platinum. Customers in the silver category allow their accounts to go overdue 30% of the time, gold customers 16% of the time, platinum customers 6.5% of the time. Find the probability that a customer is a gold member given that they are not overdue. The first thing that I would recommend us to do here is to set up a tree diagram. I'm going to pause here for a second so I can kind of get it set up using this information in our problem. The first stage is going to be the classification of the customer, and then the second stage of the tree diagram will be whether they're overdue or not. So I've got the tree diagram started here. Let's go ahead and start filling it in. First thing is our first category, which would be silver. Our second category would be our gold members, so I'm going to use a G for gold. And then our third category of customers would be platinum. Now, customers can either be overdue, or I'm going to call them overdue prime, or which we could call not overdue, overdue, not overdue, overdue, and not overdue. So the prime here just means not overdue, and you can do it however you would like to do it. So let's see here. Let's go ahead and start putting in percentages. Looks like 52% is silver. Now we're not going to write as 52% on here. I'm just going to go ahead and write it in its decimal equivalent form. Platinum is 3%, which would be 0.03. Now if 52% are silver and 3% are platinum, then gold would have to be the other 45%. Now let's talk about overdue and not overdue. For the silver members, it looks like 30% of them are overdue, so that would make this 30%. And by the way, if that's 30% overdue, then what percentage of them would be not overdue on a typical thing? That would be 70%. Gold members, looks like 16% are overdue, which would then imply that the complement of that would be 84% not overdue. And finally here for our platinum, we've got 0.65, because remember we got to move the decimal 2 places, so then that would make that 935. So there is our diagram, tree diagram for this particular problem. Okay, now to set the fraction up, we have our tree diagram done, and now we got to figure out our numerator is going to be what we're looking for, and in this case we want gold members that are not overdue. So gold members that are not overdue, that would be this percentage of gold is gold, and that percentage of the gold that's not overdue. So that's the gold and not overdue. That's going to be our numerator. Now, the next piece of this is those that are overdue or not overdue, all the different ways, whether they're silver, gold, or platinum. That's going to represent our denominator, and I'm going to see if I can highlight this here. So that would be this group here, and we also include this piece that was for our numerator, gold and not overdue. And finally we also got to consider the ways when they would be platinum and not overdue. So again, our numerator is going to be this green circled multiplication of 0.45 and 0.84. The denominator is going to be the sum of all the yellow ways. So then let's just go ahead and write down that fraction that will give us our answer. It's going to be a big fraction here. So I'm going to make a big long division bar. The numerator is going to be the gold, so 0.45 times 0.84. The denominator is going to be all the ways to not be overdue, so 0.52, 0.70 plus 0.45 times 0.84 plus, and then the last way to not be overdue, which is our platinum members, which is 3%, and 93.5% of those. Alright, so the fraction's done. Now let's use some technology here to help us compute the answer. I'm just going to type it in. So we're going to do 0.45 times 0.84. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the denominator. Now before I hit enter on this thing, I'd like to make a couple of notes. Notice that there is clearly a difference between decimal values or decimal points and the dot operator for multiply. I'd also like to note that when you're using your calculator, you need to be very careful to use your parentheses. If I didn't put the parentheses here, what it would do is it would do 0.45 times 0.84, and then it would divide that answer by 0.52 and then multiply that by 0.7. That's not what we want. We want this multiplication to occur first. Then we want this multiplication, this multiplication, this multiplication, and then those additions. And then finally, the last step should be the division. So it's very important that you have the first parenthesis and the last parenthesis here, the first parenthesis and the last parenthesis here. And now I'm going to hit enter. And this lovely calculator then shows our input here a little bit more nicely written than the way I had it with my handwriting. And here's our output, which is a fraction output, which is probably the best answer, the most exact answer. And then here's a decimal output, which would be an approximation. Alright, so let's finish this up by writing our final answer. We'll do that right here. And let's see if my pen's still on. Good. So I would say, and I'm going to do this symbolically, the probability of gold given not overdue is approximately 49.1%. That's it.